investments per share. So long story short, you get about $13,500 per A share of pre-tax earnings. That's actually down about $1,000 from $14,500 year over year because of the pandemic. Berkshire does own a number of economically sensitive businesses. They took a big write down on Precision Castparts, for example. You can imagine what the earnings of that company were last year. That makes components for aircraft engines and aircraft during the pandemic. So we put an 11 multiple on the 13.5, add it to the 290,000 per A share of cash and investments per share, and you get to 439,000. Been quite a good predictor of Berkshire share price over time.
Whitney, should Berkshire investors, should they be hearing more from Warren Buffett on some of the really important issues of our time right now? He mentioned COVID, I believe, once in reference because his furniture stores had to close down for some period of time because of COVID. Didn't mention any of the trading activity frenzy. Didn't mention anything about stimulus plans or the frenzied just activity in the markets overall. Should Berkshire be hearing more from him on these topics?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think if there were one fair critique about an absence of commentary in his letter, it would have been that, it was only, I think, 2 years ago, maybe 3 in his annual letters, Buffett said, we're not finding a lot to do, but someday it will rain gold and we will be out there not with thimbles, but with buckets to scoop up that gold. And almost 11 months ago, when the market dropped 35% in a matter of weeks, and Berkshire Hathaway stock dropped to a intraday low of $240,000 per A share, I was pounding the table myself to anyone who would listen that it was the best time to buy stocks since the global financial crisis. And I was certainly hoping that, Warren Buffett would be taking advantage of that, picking up all sorts of depressed stocks or Berkshire Hathaway stock itself. And he really didn't. And it's sort of okay. He's a very conservative person. And particularly any company, a financial company like Berkshire, when markets were on the verge of freezing up. So he played it conservatively. I think he left a lot of money on the table. I think maybe a 10 years younger Warren Buffett would have been able to put a few tens of billions of dollars of capital to work. But it's okay. Berkshire Hathaway is not a get-rich stock. It's a stay-rich stock. And so it's shareholders should know, this is not a stock to make you rich, but it's a great retirement stock for the foundation for your retirement portfolio. But, I would have expected Buffett in his annual letter to have a little bit of a mea culpa and say, what, in hindsight, I should have been more aggressive when the markets gave us, it was really only a month or so where there was an incredible window of opportunity.
Hey, Whitney, I was going to ask you about deal activity, but I'll do a different topic here about the future of Berkshire Hathaway and the leadership. We just saw Charlie Munger speak at the Daily Journal, clearly sharp as a tack at age 97, and now we're hearing from Buffett and the annual letter. What are your kind of thought process for this kind of long-term play and the future management of the company?
Yeah. By the way, a very nice interview you did with Charlie. He's a treat, isn't he? And I encourage viewers to just go to YouTube, where the 2-hour session there is posted from last week at the Daily Journal annual meeting. Look, we're clearly coming to an end of a half-century run of 2 of the greatest investment minds in the world. I do think Buffett had a few years at Berkshire. Munger is 7 years older. And Buffett is still sharp as a tack, and while Munger is really aging physically at age 97, Buffett's still spry. He seems to be in good shape in 87. Buffett's still spry. He seems to be in good shape, and he has. They've already identified the 2 people who will run the investment portfolio, and they seem to be doing a good job over the last few years. What the CEO's job, managing the operating businesses, they haven't yet revealed that person. It may be, 2 people. It could be a Greg Abel on the operating side, and then Ajit Jain running the insurance operations. But Berkshire will be in very good hands. And there's certainly no Buffett Munger premium built into the stock right now. With the stock at 364, I'm pegging intrinsic value at 439. That means it's trading at a 17% discount to its intrinsic value. Over the past 20 years, at points in the global financial crisis, for example, is trading at a 50% discount to its intrinsic value. But with the rotation away from the nosebleed valuation stocks and tech into the banks have been doing very well. And I think Berkshire will be a beneficiary of that rotation combined with substantial share repurchases. Berkshire should be on the S&P 500, for example, over the next 5 years, but you need to have realistic expectations.
Whit, it's Julie here. Of course, in that Q&A, Charlie Munger also talked about Robinhood, right? And he made some not very approving comments of that platform, said it was sort of dirty money. Although ironically, the thing that sort of, I'll leave out one of the words that was the tag of the person who advocated for that, but it was GameStop, right? Was the advocacy for GameStop. Do you think, we were talking about these guys' age and wisdom. Do you think that they're sort of missing the zeitgeist a little bit, though, when it comes to the popularity of Robinhood and its reputation?
I actually happen to agree with them. I think when we as a country, and this has happened so many times before, my initial introduction to investing was growing up in the internet bubble, a little more than 20 years ago. And when we allow our stock markets to be turned into casinos, and it draws in the most naive investors and inexperienced investors who don't have any sense of history. And then you combine that with sort of social media today. It's a real toxic brew. And I tried to warn my readers about it. Literally the day GameStop, I call it Game Stink, peaked. I called the peak to the hour almost, back declined by 90% in 2 weeks. And that was something like $20 billion was lost by investors. And I promise you, it wasn't sophisticated institutional investors who were buying Game Stink at $483 its peak. So I hope the SEC, I don't think anything illegal occurred. I'm going to speculate. And but I don't think it's healthy at all for income inequality or our economy or our stocks, our stock markets. And so I think a very simple, penny a share transaction tax or something like that discourages very short-term thinking and this hypermanic behavior in the markets, fueled by the bots, the computer systems that are out there trading like maniacs on top of human behavior. Would be a good idea. We need to, and Robinhood, of course, gamifies investing. I actually signed up for an account, and it uses all the tools of Facebook and Snapchat, et cetera, to make it highly addictive. But in this point, you're not just talking about wasting people's time. You're talking about people incinerating their savings, and these are generally people who cannot afford to lose the money that they're losing.
All right, Whitney Tilson with Empire Financial Research. Whitney, really interesting stuff as always. Thanks so much for joining the program. Julia LaRoche, thanks for joining as well. We'll talk to both of you quite soon, I know.
My pleasure.
All right, off for a short break here. Again, futures higher this morning on this Monday morning, first day of March here in 2021. We're back with more right after this.
Shares of Johnson & Johnson are up a couple percent this morning, and that's as we have a new vaccine that's available in the United States made by that company. Our Anjali Kamlani has the details on the approval of this vaccine and what that means for the distribution plan, Anjali.
That's right, Julie. So we know that on Friday last week, that's when the Vaccine Advisory Committee to the FDA recommended the authorization for emergency use. That went through in a unanimous vote. And then the following day, we saw the FDA authorize the vaccine. Now, another step after that is that the CDC has an advisory panel that recommends approval of the authorization. And then following that, the CDC itself approves it. So we've got all the boxes checked for this vaccine to roll out by J&J's Janssen pharma unit. And then following that, we're going to find out likely today from senior White House officials what the plan to roll out the vaccine is. We know that there are about 4 million doses standing by, and we know that that's a single shot vaccine. So all 4 million are going to be used just once to provide that protection. And then that rollout is going to happen this week, but then after that, there may be a little bit of a gap because that's all that Johnson & Johnson had on stock. So following that, there might be a little bit of a break, and then we'll see more vaccines rolled out. They're planning for 20 million to be available by the end of the month. Now, another thing I also want to just bring up real quick is that while we're focusing on the vaccines, therapeutics have also been an issue. We know that there hasn't been as much news about that, and we did hear today that an NIH-funded study on convalescent plasma, if we recall, that was one of the really hopeful treatments, it has halted because it's proving to be not really beneficial. So that takes one option off the table now. We're still using just some generics and Gilead's drug. So within the treatment space, it's still rolling a little slow. Good thing we have those vaccines coming out. Julie?
Yes, most appreciated. Our Anjali Kamlani, who covers all things COVID related for us. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be talking about the continued interplay between the bond and the stock market as we approach the opening bell. Stay with us.
vaccines upon people. And so this is what's happening. This is what the runaway judicial system is doing in this country. And this expose, which is coming out on National File in about an hour or so, I think is really going to wake a lot of people up.
Last night, and we also interviewed this very brave mother for coming forward. And the judge he has hatred in his voice. Yeah. And you'll hear it in about an hour when it goes live on nationalfile.com. But the judge is saying, well, first of all, your client has no credibility. She's one of these anti-mask people, and she has the audacity to put this garbage on her social media that she's an anti-mask people. She wouldn't wear